Great, and we are live. Let's just turn that up a bit. As always, guys, I'll just give a minute for people to join, let things settle a little bit. Welcome to everyone who's joining. Thank you so much for being with us today. Hello, Frequencies Lab, good to see you. Always great to see familiar faces. Really excited to be doing this live today. 2 lives in a week, having gone from nothing to 2 in a week. I feel like it's a good week. I really enjoyed the last live, and I'm particularly looking forward to this one today. I'll just give a minute for everyone to join, and then I'll take a second to introduce this live, and then I'm hoping our guest today is gonna pop up. I see a little wave from him there. So I'll just take a minute to introduce this live. Today I'm really excited to be speaking to a friend of mine, someone I admire hugely. He's called Jerome Foster II. The second is the important part. Jerome Foster I is his father, of course. It's a uniquely American thing that I feel like to have the second, unless of course you're royalty here in the UK, and then you do have the second, third and the fourth. And I feel like it's fitting because Jerome is royalty when it comes to the climate activism space. So yeah, I'm really excited to be speaking to him today. Jerome has very recently just been appointed as a member of the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but it's an incredible achievement at such a young age. And I think it's one of the things that defines Jerome is how many amazing achievements he has for such an incredibly young person. I'm going to add him in and we can get stuck into the conversation. Jerome!
Hey!
Hey buddy, how's it going?
I'm doing great, how are you?
I'm good. You're lagging a little bit. Your connection, it seems to be a little bit slow for me. How is it on your end?
Yeah, I can't see your video at all. You're a bit laggy.
Yeah, it's a bit laggy. You're outside, you're doing this al fresco. Oh dear. It seems to be loading. Let's just give Jerome a minute to see if his internet can catch up. I'm hoping it's not, yeah, Jerome is frozen. I'm hoping it's not on my side. I feel like Jerome's taking this al fresco and it might be pushing the internet connection a little bit. If it's the case that Jerome can't connect, we might just pause for a minute. Maybe Jerome can grab some Wi-Fi and then we'll jump back on. And he's left. And then there was one. Okay, no worries. I feel like what I'll do is I'll just natter away for a minute, give Jerome a chance to reconnect and see if that works. And then if it doesn't, we can always restart this when Jerome has a better internet connection. Do you know what? In the meantime, while we wait for Jerome, I wonder if anyone here has any questions. Let's use this as a chance to do a Q&A. It's great to see comments popping up from people. Yes, the joys of technical difficulties. It wouldn't be an Instagram Live if there wasn't some audio or Wi-Fi issue. I feel like that's just part and parcel. You can see and hear me clearly. Well, that's good. I was rather hoping you could see and hear my guest more clearly, who's far more interesting than me. But I'm really excited to be speaking to Jerome today. I'm sure most people here are aware of his work. Jerome has been a leading climate activist in the United States. He has an insane amount of achievements under his belt. He has welcomed Greta Thunberg to Washington, D.C. He was a congressional intern for the late Congressman John Lewis. He is a virtual reality developer, just to add that to the list. He is the executive director of 1 Million of Us, which is an amazing organization dedicated to youth voting and advocacy organization. And he's recently been appointed as the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council member. Bit of a tongue twister there. And he's like, I don't know how old he is. He's like 21 or something. He puts us all to shame. But we've been friends for a while and I've been wanting to find a way to have a conversation. And so have used his recent appointment on this council as an excuse. And so For those just joining, Jerome was here. He's just dropped off. I'm hoping he is going to find a way to improve his internet. And then if he does, hopefully he can join. If he doesn't, we may have to reset this. Let me just send him a WhatsApp while we're here and see how he's doing. Thank you for everyone who's bearing with us. This is the way with lives. How's your internet? Do you want to delay? Great. Oh, okay, I can see a request. All right, let's try add Jerome in again and then see if we get this working a second time around. I see you, Jerome. There you are, you're back.
Yeah, hey.
Hey, can you hear me? Is that working? I'm seeing the dreaded spinning wheel of doom. Yeah, oh, the wheel's disappeared. Yeah, I can see you just about. It's not amazing connection. Where are you in the world?
I'm in Coney Island. I'm in Seagate.
Cool.
Here. Yeah, just from here. Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of lag on this side. How is it for everyone else? I feel like Jerome, can you hear me? It's really breaking up for me.
Yeah, I can hear. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? Oh, there you go. There you go. It seems to have caught up. Hey, I think I can hear you. It seems to have caught up a little bit. Very lag. Yeah, it still seems to be lagging. Jerome, is there any way you can get Wi-Fi as opposed to just being on like 4G?
Yeah, I'm connected to hotspot now. It still is like. Yeah. Could we say like 10:30 or 10:15?
Yeah, why don't we hold off?
We reconvene. Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
10:15. Okay.
Okay,
Awesome.
so we'll re-meet back here at, is that give you enough time, 10:15?
Yeah, 10:15, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So that's 5 minutes from now, essentially. Okay, so there you go. There's the verdict. We'll reboot this 5 minutes from now. I mean, I'll tell you what, I'll just hang around for a little bit if anyone else wants to. Why don't I'll answer some questions and maybe Jerome will join again in 4 or 5 minutes. And if not, I can always end it and restart. But while we're live, may as well make the most of it. Perhaps I can answer questions. Throw them into the comments below and I will do my best to answer them. I saw some popping up earlier, so I can always jump onto one of those. There's a few questions. Okay, so there's a few questions about podcasts and future projects for Earthrise. So maybe I can speak to that. We are busy at Earthrise. We have a lot of different projects that we're working on. A podcast was something that we considered for a long time. And in the end, we decided to make something a little bit different. And so we've been working on a show called The Breakdown. I post on this a little bit on my personal account, but this is an explainer series all about climate change. And for us, it was a way of combining elements of a podcast, so interviewing experts in the space, but also making it a little bit more visual and a little bit more short form and fast paced. And this was, to me, this is the show that I always wanted to watch. It's a sort of fast paced, hopefully engaging 5-part show that breaks down many different aspects of climate change. So it starts with how we got here. It looks at climate denial. It looks at why this is a crisis. The IPCC report that said we had 12 years, now 10, the 1.5 to 2 degree limit. Then the 4th episode looks at climate justice, which I think is the episode I'm most excited about. And then episode 5 looks at solutions and what you can do. So this will be our first video series as Earthrise Studio. I'll be really honest, it's been one of the more challenging things I've ever done. we were very, very lucky to have Water Bear Network commission us to make it. They're a new SVOD platform specializing in content about the environment. And they approached us a few months ago and offered us this opportunity. And, it's been one of those things where we've just thrown ourselves into it. I've learned a huge amount making it. We had to do the whole thing remotely. So it combines interviews done over Zoom with archive elements and animation. And we were really lucky to work with Studio 11, an amazing animation team who came in and have helped bring it to life. And I'm really excited to share it. Where we're currently at with it was we have 5 rough cuts of all the episodes. And the hope is that it will go onto Water Bear in May and then out onto our channels in June. So a little bit longer to wait, but it's been a really great process making it and something I'm really excited to share. So that's one of the things we're doing. And, that was an answer to the question about, oh, I can see Ross Mason. That's our incredibly talented animator. I always think when it comes to projects like The Breakdown, it always reminds me that filmmaking or storytelling in any capacity is a collaborative process. And really that's what Earthrise was about. It was about setting up this challenge. Can we communicate climate change better? With the hope that it would enable more people to take action. What I've learned so far in the last year of making it is the key to telling great stories is collaboration. The only reason we've been able to make The Breakdown, the only reason we're able to post the daily graphics that we share is due to the incredible team we have around us. Our designer, Kim Vara, who works every single day doing the graphic design. Our researcher, Chloe, who writes and researches and runs the account on a daily basis. When it comes to The Breakdown, we have an editor, an animator, a graphic designer, sound designer, a composer, all of these people who are giving their creative talents for way below their day rate because they believe in the purpose. They believe in trying to tell this story. And it's been a really exciting process. And honestly, it's given me a lot of hope starting Earthrise and going through this process, because it's a reminder that humans can do amazing things when we put our minds to it and when we work together, and particularly young people. So it feels really exciting to be in this space. There's a lot of energy and a lot of amazingly talented people, and it feels great to be a part of that. So that's one project we're doing. There are other projects we're working on, although I'm not sure whether it's my place to talk about them, but Alice, one of our co-founders, is working incredibly hard on a project that we're really truly excited about, and that will be launching on Earth Day. And I don't want to say any more about it, but it's something we're really excited about. And it's a collaboration with another organization that we really admire. We're working on, another thing we're doing is we're working on a website and a newsletter. That's been underway for a little bit, and we're really excited to get that done. I'd love to know, maybe to anyone here watching this, what would you like to see? Why are you a part of this community? What is it you enjoy? Perhaps what is it you find frustrating? And what would you like to see more of? This is ultimately a community, and we so value getting feedback from our audience, understanding what you need to better understand climate, to take action in your own life, to feel a part of a community. Because I think at the end of the day, what makes understanding climate change so much harder is the sense that you're the only one going through it, that no one else understands how you feel. And that was certainly the case for me in 2018, when I found myself in the depth of despair and climate anxiety. And for me, what really helped was finding a community, finding other people to talk to. I've just seen Jerome Foster pop up again. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to add him back in, and hopefully we can kickstart this conversation.
What am I doing? I'm walking?
Okay. You're just going to walk on the beach.
Hey!
Jerome!
Hey!
That is so much better.
Yes.
That's
yes,
great.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Are you on a beach?
Yeah, I'm on a beach. Yeah. I'm at Coney Island.
Okay, you're at Coney Island.
Yeah,
what a great
Seagate.
location.
This is Seagate. It was impacted by Sandy Hook. So
okay.
we're coming here talking about the community that's been here. So yeah.
Okay, because so you're to make things even more complicated, you're also filming a documentary at the moment, and I think they're filming you for this live. Just tell me a
Yes.
little bit about that before we get started,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
can.
Yeah, I can't talk too much about it.
Okay.
But yeah, they're filming about some of the communities across New York City that have been impacted by the climate crisis. So we're going to different communities, telling about their history and that story through just like actually physically going there. So it's just been amazing just to go to places that have been impacted by like some of the hurricanes of that's hit New York City, and like seeing how climate change has impacted this entire like community. So it's been eye-opening to say the least. Like I know like Washington D.C. and New York City have like very similar like experiences of exposure to climate change. So it was like a shift actually being able to like go and see it from first-hand experience. So yeah.
100%, man, and so powerful to see the effects of climate change at home, because I think so
Exactly.
often we think about it as an issue that's far away, that happens in other places. And of
Yeah.
course, you're right. It's, you know, as an American citizen, it's right on your doorstep. It's in California, it's in New York City. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's something we're only starting to wake up to.
Exactly. It's definitely been an eye-opening experience for a lot of Americans this year, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic and wildfires and so many other issues compounding on each other. So people can know like climate change isn't just going to impact in one way. It's going to impact in many different ways, especially with like hurricanes to rising sea levels, and seeing how like a lot of the infrastructure here, especially in America, is pretty outdated because
Mm,
government doesn't really invest in keeping them up to date or even like helping communities that have been impacted. So it's also a battle of like once climate change has hit, how do we recover from it? And that's like some of the battles of like some communities do get relief and other communities don't. And that's predominantly communities of color as well that aren't getting the relief in terms of like hurricanes and so many other events that happen. So yeah,
yeah.
it's so many angles in which climate change is just rearing its ugly head from like before it even happens. People are you have to be aware of it, and after it happens, you have to recover from it. So it's hard, yeah. But
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Many different stages. And I think you're right that COVID has taught us a lot this year. It's taught us, you know, the challenges when we don't listen to scientists. It's taught us how vulnerable many of our infrastructures are across the world. And, you know, it's hopefully a wake up call, I think, for climate. I hope there's a lot of lessons that can be taken from that and applied, as you say, to mitigating, but also adapting as some of the inevitable effects of climate change happen around the world. Jerome,
absolutely.
maybe I could just start with an introduction of you. I'm going to embarrass you on camera. I'm sure many people watching are familiar with you and your work, but in case anyone isn't, you're a climate activist. You've welcomed Greta Thunberg to Washington D.C. multiple times. You were a congressional intern for the late Congressman John Lewis. Is that right?
Yes.
You are a virtual reality developer. I just love that that is one of the things on your list, on your bio. It's just incredible. You're the executive director of 1 Million of Us, which is an amazing youth voting and advocacy organization. And you've recently been appointed as the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council member. Jerome, how do you find time to like have breakfast in the morning?
It is pretty crazy. Like I actually probably don't get as much sleep as I should, but like it's the thrill of making an impact. It's always exhilarating figuring out new ways to actually like do things. Like with my virtuality, a lot of people think it's like so tangential to like the rest of the work that I do, but it was like instrumental in like how I like started being an activist, because all of my virtuality experiences were like extremely connected in like civic ways. Like my first virtuality environment was about the story of a 5-year-old migrant traveling from Guatemala to southern Texas and demystifying the understanding of like migrants and just telling their story in a new way. And as I continue to build, it was just how do we tell stories in a medium that is 360 degrees. You're immersed in that entire experience, and you're able to step into someone else's shoes. And I think just throughout the day, it's just like just trying to figure out more ways and more strategies to kind of highlight these experiences, because over time people kind of zone out just traditional ways of like learning about climate change, because no one likes reading long policies and doing large reports and reading that, but they want to know like new ways to be engaged. So I'll say yeah, that's kind kind of a struggle finding personal time, but it's fun. I love the work that I do, so it's great.
Well,
How do you find
I mean,
personal time? I know you're like filming an entire film, like you're doing episodes, like Earthrise is like hugely successful and amazing. So like, what are you doing in your spare time to keep sane?
I can relate to lacking a little bit on sleep. You know, I feel like once you get that bug of the sort of the fire and the passion to tell stories, and you realize how short a time we have, how much there is to do.
Yeah,
Sort of, it's amazing because it's purpose, right? It gets you out of bed every day, but there are definitely a lot of
yeah,
times where it feels like too much and it feels overwhelming and it's hard to know where to start. But to me, the good days outnumber the bad days. You know, it's like it's what keeps me going every day. And I'm in awe of you, man. You know, I've been following your work, as you know, for a while, and I think it's incredible the amount of things you do. And you know, that's our aim here on Earthrise is to communicate climate better. You know, I've often been vocal about the fact that I see it as a storytelling challenge. You know, we know what the problem is, and we have many of the solutions. But how do we communicate that in a way that is accessible to the masses? Because unless we do that, then we're not going to create the scale of change needed.
absolutely. Yeah, it's just about like a lot of climate deniers are just unaware of like the scale and just like aren't able to anchor themselves locally as well. So I think that's really just addressing it. But yeah, like I also just want to talk about like you being in the UK, which is like the elephant in the room, and me being in the US. Like, what is like some of the difference like you've seen in like perspective, um, inside of Europe, and say like when you visit other countries, how is like the shift in climate change that you've seen through the work that you've done? Like in, I know some regions are more ambitious and others aren't.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I mean, I would say most people in the UK aren't particularly aware of climate change. It's not something that's
Oh,
affected
okay.
us in the UK on the whole, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think for me, I was very naive to the effects of climate change. And it was only when I started to travel to countries around the world that, and I recognize the irony of traveling to learn about climate change, right? Because of the
Yeah.
carbon emissions. But it was on
Yeah.
those trips that I began to see and understand the impacts of climate change firsthand. And I understood that it wasn't just an environmental issue, but an issue of social rights and human justice, you know. And I think that's our
Yeah.
challenge as storytellers is communicating climate crisis and bringing it closer to home, because otherwise we
Yeah.
won't feel moved to take action. But you know, I think it's interesting this year in the UK in particular, we're going through a big change this year because we're hosting COP26 in Glasgow.
Yeah.
It's the first time
Yeah.
we've hosted this conference, and it's going to, as you know, it's going to be a major deal. It's 5 years on from the Paris Climate Agreement, well, 6, but you know, pushed because of
Yeah.
COVID. And
Yeah.
so I think that this year, the UK in particular will go through a huge awakening around climate. I hope, anyway. That's why we're here. That's our aim. And you know,
Absolutely.
it's been an amazing year so far. I mean, we had Extinction Rebellion pop up in 2018. That led to the UK declaring a climate and ecological emergency. Obviously, those are just words, but we're starting to see policy put in place. The UK was one of the first countries to commit to net zero by 2050, and you know they're moving in the right direction. That said, you know, the other day there was announced there would be a new coal mine in Cumbria, so by the same government that have committed to net zero. So it's like, as I'm sure you're aware, it's like
Yeah.
wins and losses, and it just requires the constant support of climate activists. But I've been watching
Yeah.
you guys from the other side of the pond with sort of fascination as Biden's taken office. And, you know, how are you feeling? I mean, just to give the context quickly, last time we spoke, it was in the run up to the US elections.
Yep.
You were running
Yep.
around trying to get as many young people as possible to vote in the midst
Yes.
of a global pandemic. Here we are now, and Biden, thank the Lord, has got into office. And it seems to be pretty amazing. But
Yeah.
how are you feeling from an environmental perspective?
Yeah, I think that in comparison to like the US and like the work that is being done here, it's very similar to the UK. Like for us, like we we kind of see ourselves as being insulated and like protected from the climate crisis, but we really aren't. And I think like especially with COP26, like America is much more domestically focused now, and we're focusing on like how can we update our infrastructure and how can we protect ourselves from climate change, because America's like really lacking in the necessary infrastructure needed to actually prevent like the next 10 years of damages. And I think that's kind of different from other like European countries, is that you guys have like more modern infrastructure when it comes to like sea walls and like things like that. But yeah, it was a shock. It was a good shock when he was elected though. It was an amazing like feeling knowing that like the work that we did all throughout 2020 actually had like a tangible impact. It had like a major impact on like how we're actually going to do things. And we saw people like just being like, we did it. We actually did it. We elected someone who will actually make changes, and we have young people in office now. We have people that are actually going to make changes, like Secretary Kerry and like Gina McCarthy, who are like heading up these different groups, are now actually doing things. So I think in 2020 we'll see a lot more. In 2021 we'll see a lot more actions. Hopefully post COP26, and also the U.S. is hosting the conference of leaders in the next 2 weeks. So I think we're trying to be leaders. America's trying to like return to that leadership position, and I'm glad to see that. Yeah.
It's
And
huge. It's hugely satisfying, man. And I think it's
yeah.
important when you're in the activism space to celebrate those wins because they're far and few between. And it's important just to take a minute to be like, okay, this is progress, you know. And it has been incredible to watch, even just from where I'm sat. I mean, Biden's come in. He seems to be putting climate front and center of his
Yeah,
policies,
absolutely.
at least verbally. You mentioned a bit there this recovery plan. I mean, he's launched this $2 trillion recovery plan to update roads, bridges, railways. But my understanding is within that, lots of elements of the Green New Deal. He's talked a lot about, tackling racial injustice and environmental racism. And so there's a lot of really progressive policies almost hidden within that broader package. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially with the recent action that he's done with offshore wind and also putting together this environmental justice council, is that we're addressing head on the issues of environmental racism, the issues of the intersectionality between like how do we have our infrastructure actually be proactive and also preventative of like these major issues. Like if we only build 2 feet or 3 feet of seawall, how are we actually going to prevent like massive changes in the far future? Well, not in the far future, the near future for a lot of us. And I think a lot of the changes that Biden is also proposing is also like a needed recovery from like what's happened over the last 4 years of Trump. And like we've just seen like the rollback of all of our environmental policies, and we're finally seeing a return to that. Like a lot of California's emission standards were just ripped apart and just like continually under attack under the Trump administration. And it was sad to see. And now we're actually seeing that like it's a complete reversal. We're actually having our public lands respected. We're having a lot of our communities being rebuilt, and a lot of the native species being rebuilt as well by not just selling off plots of land to corporations to exploit and just destroy. And it's a weird response because a lot of people think like in like states like Texas or like Oklahoma or West Virginia, you'd assume that people are mad about taking climate action. But when you talk to them, like a lot of people that I know that are climate activists, some of them are in West Virginia, and they're like, no, this is like we want climate action too. Like we're just coal workers. We're still just people working in the fossil fuel industry because it's the only economic opportunity that we have. But they want to be a part of the change. They want to be a part of fixing things because they're feeling it too. Like being placed to a lot of these coal-fired power plants is impacting them as well. So I think
Right.
Biden has really opened up everyone's eyes from all parts of the spectrum, from like stereotypically Republican or Democratic sides to unite. Yeah. So
100%. And it seems like he's really reframing, tackling this issue as, the idea that there is a better world on the other side of this for everyone, rather
yeah.
than, tackling climate change is a great sacrifice that we all have to make. And, both are true, perhaps in different ways, but I think it's so exciting to see him focusing on that positive message, because that's just needed to make this transition. I think one of the things that's been most exciting to watch, in a way, is this new administration engaging with young activists. I saw early on the administration doing Instagram lives with people like Leah Thomas, who I just saw pop up earlier from Intersectional Environmentalist, with amazing accounts like Future Earth. And then now the creation of this new advisory council, which you are a member of. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that. What is the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council?
Yes. So the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council is a council that lives under the administration's Environmental Quality Commission, and we work directly on addressing environmental racism and also addressing key infrastructure. So one of the biggest things is the Justice 40 initiative, where 40% of funds that are not used in the executive branch will now be directed towards environmental justice efforts, like key infrastructure, like communities that are at the front lines of the climate crisis, like making sure that we're retrofitting a lot of our new developments as well. So a lot of that has been through do this council. And the other responsibility of this council is to craft the language of his next executive order. So his first executive order was about like really overturning a lot of Trump's past actions, and also putting teeth in like the Clean Air Act and making more like nationwide standards. But now this next executive order is going to take like another step. He's going to really nationalize like the pressure of actually putting it on like fossil fuel companies to make sure that they aren't continuing to get subsidies. They aren't continuing to get economic relief for putting people at risk and putting people's lives in danger. So I think that's really that's one of another responsibility of the council as well. And the third working group that we're working on is what we're calling an environmental justice screening tool, where we identify which communities need help and how much they need help specifically. So say this community that I'm in right now, like in Coney Island, and in Seagate, we're seeing that like they need federal relief right now. They need relief that is actually going to retrofit and actually allow for about 6 feet of wall over the next 5 years to prevent a lot of that sea level rise. And it's through that council that we're able to bring forward communities that need to be identified and quickly addressed in a way that gives them federal funding and access to federal funds. So
right, yeah,
we have a lot of money at our disposal, and we can actually do some good with it. So
well, that's an amazing thing, and I think it's going to be so exciting to watch that play out over the next couple of years. And I think what's so great about what you're saying there is it's about recognizing that different communities are affected disproportionately by the climate crisis, and those are often those are BIPOC communities. Those are people who are already the most marginalized in society. But I wonder, for anyone watching and who are uncertain, could you define environmental justice for us? We hear these terms a lot: environmental justice, environmental racism. What do they mean?
Yeah, I think that when we talk about environmental justice, people don't really see the environment as like a justice issue. They just see it as like a science and technology issue.
Right.
And I think when we're talking about environmental justice, a lot of what we're saying is that the communities that have been disproportionately at risk are not receiving a lot of the relief that they need and relief that they're demanding. And what environmental justice is saying is that we can't just slap a solar panel on the climate crisis and expect everyone to be okay. Right. We're actually expecting like infrastructure that's going to help communities in the long term. We're expecting investment in technology that's going to help suck out carbon emissions. And it's like the justice element of it is how it compounds on Indigenous and Black economic inequalities. Like a lot of what's happened, especially pertaining to America, is that a lot of our communities have been redlined. And that redlining attracted companies to come into our communities and pollute because land values are cheaper. So that adds another health aspect to it, thinking, well, why is there a PFOA factory, a plastic factory, and a coal factory in one community? And the two communities over, there's none of that. And it's just understanding that like that disproportionately is in Black communities because we've just been relegated to not have access to economic relief. And that's really what we're talking about when it comes to environmental justice and environmental racism, is that the racist system of oppression permeate into the environmental movement. Like it permeates into every movement. Like we just have to think about how it impacts the world and understand it from that lens. And yeah, I think that's like a breakdown of what it is, because like everyone who's not in the environmental movement doesn't really like think of it as like a justice movement. They just think of it like, let's make solar panels and then this issue's gonna be over, or let's make some wind turbines. But gotta think of it as like a holistic perspective as well.
Right, that's totally it. Looking at the more intersectional nature of climate, which is what Leah Thomas is doing so amazingly with intersectional environmentalists. And I had a chance recently to speak to the amazing climate justice writer Mariana East Hegler, and I asked.
She's in New York as well. She's a New Yorker.
She's in New Yorker as well, exactly. Yeah. And she runs the Hot Take podcast. I'm sure many people here are aware of it, but she's an amazing thinker in this space, and she defined it for me like this, and I found this really helpful. She said, when it comes to understanding environmental justice or environmental injustice, it helps to think about it as the past, the present, and the future. And she talked about, in the past, colonialism and slavery led to the discovery of fossil fuels, which has led to the situation we are in now, climate change, right? In the present, we have environmental racism, as you've said, so that's building pipelines under Black communities, that's having disproportionate amounts of air pollution levels in BIPOC communities. And then she talked about in the future, we're going to see this play out in the sense that, as we know, climate change disproportionately affects people living in the global south. It doesn't affect everyone equally. And I think that's really interesting to think about how injustice doesn't just play out today, it's played out in the past, the present, and will play out continually in the future. And then you start to understand how deeply intertwined race and equity is with climate change.
Absolutely, yeah. It's. I
She's a
think she's
hero.
just a phenomenal thinker as well. Like she is just excellent, just like framing the climate crisis in a way that people can just access it and understand its impact. Yeah.
100%. She makes it very relatable, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question about like what do you see like from the work that's coming from COP26 and how are you preparing like with groups in preparation for that work? And how do you
What
see like the UK's role in like the groups that the conference is happening in about 2 weeks or so with the US?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the UK's opportunity to become a world leader in the transition to net zero. You know, it's about us assuming our own responsibility. I mean, it's easy to forget that the UK was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, right? We kicked off this great fossil fuel experiment, and it's now impacting people living all around the world. Particularly those who are the least responsible, you know, countries who've barely burnt fossil fuels in comparison to like the UK and the US's history. So I think this is about it kind of coming home in the UK, acknowledging their responsibility. I would like to see a tangible plan to halve carbon emissions by 2030. I feel like that's missing. But I'd also like to see some conversations about climate reparations. I feel like that's a conversation that hasn't come to the forefront yet. It's something the UK should be leading, the US too. And I'm really hoping that's something that's going to pop up at the end of this year.
That's very true. I think like for our council as well, we're aiming for a 75% emissions reductions by 2030, and like that's I think if that's like a good aspect, then we can continue on that road. But I have to head out in a bit. But one more question or so. But there's one minute to go.
Yeah, you're on a lovely beach. The sun looks like it's sort of setting or rising, and I don't want to keep you too long, but maybe I just hit you with
it's setting. Yeah.
It's setting.
Oh, no, it's rising. Yeah, I think it's right. Yeah, it's rising.
Yeah, you're like 10 a.m., 10:30,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'll just hit you with a final question then, Jerome. You know, while we're here, like, what does the future look like for you? Obviously, you've got 1,000,001 things on your plate, but what does this year look like, and what's your focus?
Yeah, like for this year, there's so much in focus. Like, for this council, I'm going to be like putting together like a coalition to inform the action that our council takes, because like me being the only young person there is like unacceptable. Like, I'm the youngest person in the administration by like a decade. The next youngest person in the Biden administration is 38 years old. That is like so crazy. Like, there should be way more young people that have representation in this administration. So I'm definitely gonna be working hard to create like a space for young people to give direct input to this administration. Also, I'll be making more virtuality environments. Getting back into that because I haven't done that for like 2 years. So gotta get back to my roots.
Yeah, man.
And 10,000 other things. I have no clue. It happens like every month I might have an idea of like maybe I want to like make a video detailing like how different communities are impacted and like telling that story. I love like just how like we can tell stories in virtual reality and just like have a different perspective. So I'm gonna like step into that more.
Okay, I'm throwing us out there publicly so I can hold you to it. I'm feeling a collaboration between Earthrise Studio and Jerome Foster II, some sort of virtual reality storytelling series coming to you 2022. What do you reckon?
100%. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Jerome,
I'm holding you to it.
Yeah, hold me to it, man. It's public now, so there's no going back on this. Dude, it's always such a pleasure to hear from you, to see you. You honestly, you give me hope, you give me life. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
You too,
and good luck, man.
Thank you, yeah. Good luck.
We'll stay in touch, buddy. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
All right, man. All the best. Bye.